Napokon belül 40 éves leszek, úgyhogy megcsináltattam az első tetoválásomat, a gyerekem csinálta filctollal, és a családomtól azt kapom ajándékba, hogy végre befalaznak a konyhába, amin csak egy pici kiadóablakot hagynak, hogy mégiscsak kiszolgálhassam őket, de ne zavarjam őket túl sokat. Elég nagy követ nem találtam, hogy alábújjak. De nemrégiben volt osztálytalálkozóm, ahol többen megjegyezték, hogy semmit nem változtam az érettségi óta, és igazuk is van, már 18 évesen is 40-nek néztem ki. Lehet, hogy emiatt sem ért még utol teljesen az öregedéssel kapcsolatos pánik, de talán azért sem, mert nem feltétlenül látom tragikusnak az öregséget. 20 évesen, kezdő újságíróként például idegbajt kaptam attól, amikor azt mondogatták a senior kollégek, hogy ti vagytok a jövő. Mert ez csak annyit jelent, hogy nem mi vagyunk a jelen, hogy nekünk még várni kell a kispadon. Ennél is bosszantóbb volt, hogy folyton kisasszonynak szólítottak, ami a legkomolytalanabb dolog. Egy alkalommal úgy kisasszonyozott le valaki, hogy épp a csecsemőmet szoptattam. Hát mit kéne még tennem, hogy nyilvánvalóvá váljon, hogy nem vagyok kisasszony? Nem a családi állapotomról van ilyenkor szó, mert minden retrográd marhaság dacára már rég nem ebben mérjük a nők státuszát, felnőtt nőket ne kisasszonyozzon le senki. Ha mindenáron modoroskodni akar, akkor legalább legyen precíz és szólítson asszonynak, sőt, ténysasszonynak. Az évek aztán meghozták erre is a megoldást, plusz 20 kiló. Az ember lánya meghízik, ez a fajta bájolgás örökre elolvad körülötte.
There is always something that young people can do and you can't, and that can make you appear as less valuable for society.
I see a lot of people my age who start doing a PhD.
Geriatric pregnancy, just the word itself sounds like your baby is going to come out of the womb with a long grey mustache.
From my perspective, I think we have to see that in our current society we still have the privilege to decide against children, and this privilege hasn't always been there.
Please teach me how to age gracefully, now in 13 easy steps.
I would rather teach you to age disgracefully. I mean, I think that's much more fun.
Okay.
Az anti-aging iparág méretét 2 éven 47 milliárd dollárra becsülték, és az évtized végéig várhatóan 80 milliárd dollárosra hízik majd ez a méret. Persze a becslések nagy eltéréseket mutathatnak attól függően, hogy ki mit számít bele az életkor elleni küzdelem kategóriájába. Leggyakrabban a bőr- és hajkezeléseket számítják ide, de beletartozhatnak olyan egyéb plastikai beavatkozások is, mint mondjuk a zsírleszívás, és a mellplasztika, illetve az esztétikai fogászat, meg hát persze az elmaradhatatlan diétaipar. Ugyanakkor fontos, hogy ne keverjük össze az öregedés elleni kozmetikai küzdelmet az életet ténylegesen meghosszabbító kezelésekkel. Az anti-aging egyszerűen az öregedés látható jeleit igyekszik csökkenteni, és a nyomás egyre fokozódik. Az internet körülbelül fele lehet pornó, 1/3 beauty content, és a maradékon osztozunk a hírekkel, a hivatalos intézményekkel, és természetesen velem, meg a webshopokkal, ahol zoknit lehet kapni. Legújabban már 20 éveseket, sőt 10 éveseket is céloznak marketing kampányok, amelyek megelőző jelleggel ajánlják a botoxot, vagyonokba kerülő 16 lépéses bőrápoló rutinokat és mérhetetlen sok kozmetikai terméket. Pedig a fiatalság illúziója nem volt mindig ennyire kelendő termék. Történelmi szempontból aránylag fiatal fejleményről beszélünk. Mária Terézia például igen büszkén fitoktatta császárnői tokáit, és egyre tekintélyesebb ősztincseit, mert az ő korában még teljesen más volt a szépségideál, és az ő kortársaként nekem is sokkal kevesebb kozmetikai problémám lenne. A divatipar egészen az 1960-as évekig nem is a tiniket és a 20 éveseket célozta, hanem elsősorban a stabil keresettel bíró középkorú vásárlókat, akik javarészt azért követték a divatot, hogy a társadalmi státuszukat jelöljék és megerősítsék. Aki erről többet szeretne tudni, utána nézhet a történelmi ruházattal foglalkozó Karolina Zebrowska YouTube csatornáján, vagy egy divattörténész Nicole Rudolph videóiban linkelünk majd ilyeneket. A középkorúság az nem az öregség egyik alkategóriája. Az ember 30 és 60 éves kora között középkorú. Nem 57 évesen lesz az. A középkorúság nem azonos a kapuzárási pánikkal, amit illedelmesebb nevén életközepi válságként emlegetnek. Annak ellenére, hogy az emberek elsöprő többségének nem a késő 40-es évei bizonyulnak majd az élete közepének. Javaslom minden kedves nézőnek, hogy ízlelgesse a kategóriát. Akár előtte, akár mögötte jár, vagy épp csüdig benne gázol, mert az a tapasztalatom, hogy ez segít kihúzni az öregedéstől való félelem egyik fő méregfogát is. Talán a falusi neveltetésnek is köszönhető, de az én fejemben például az öregedés nem valami páratlan sorstragédia, hanem egy sikermutató. Az ember egyre hajlottabb kora pusztán annyit jelent, hogy még mindig életben van, ami szerintem elég jó dolog. Én bírom. Persze nőkre és férfiakra egészen különböző mértékű nyomás hárul, és ennek az az alapja, hogy a társadalom még mindig nagy mértékben jószágként tekint a nőkre, akiknek a termékenysége és a fizikai egészsége hasonlóképpen befolyásolja a piaci értékét, mint egy fejős tehénnek. Ennek azonban kevés köze van ahhoz, hogy valójában hogyan érzi magát a bőrében, mennyire sikeres, vagy milyen minőségű emberi kapcsolatokat ápol a környezetével az ember, sőt, hogy milyen mértékben vesz részt például a következő generációk nevelésében és gondozásában. És ennek ellenére végtelen óraszámban sápítozik a nyilvánosság azon, ha egy nőnek látszó élőlény láthatóan öregszik, de azon is, ha láthatóan küzd az öregedéssel. A méltóságteljes öregedés szintén csak egy mítosz. Akinek nem kell kemény fizikai munkát végeznie, eleget tud pihenni, kevés az életében a stressz, aki ki tudja fizetni a legjobb minőségű kezeléseket és az állapotához illő ruhákat, sminket, kiegészítőket, az méltóságteljesebbnek fog tűnni, pedig valójában csak gazdagabb. Nyilvánvalóan fontos vízválasztó a női anatómiával élők számára a változókor, azaz a menopauza, ami sokak számára nagyon megterhelő fizikai tünetekkel jár, és hasonlóan például az endometriózishoz és más nőgyógyászati komplikációkhoz gyalázatosan alulkutatott területet képez annak ellenére, hogy több milliárd embert érint. Ezt a lemaradást kezdte el bepótolni az orvostudomány az utóbbi évtizedekben is, a hormonpótló terápiák, hormonális alapú inzulin problémák és sok más tünet kezelésére egy csomó új lehetőség áll rendelkezésre, úgyhogy csak bíztatni tudok mindenkit, hogyha néha tüzönvizen át is, de járja ki magának a kellő orvosi támogatást, mert óriási különbséget jelent az ember életminőségében. Sőt, a várható élettartamában is. És ezt javaslom az idősödő férfiaknak is, azaz minden férfinek, aki életben van, mert bármely időpillanatban idősödünk, mert hát így működik az idő. A biológiai változások lehetnek kevésbé látványosak vagy rajtaütésszerűek a férfi anatómiában, de ettől még az egészségügyi kockázatok stabilan növekednek. Hiába bizonygatod nekem, tese, a 6. sör mellől, hogy te még nem érzed magad 46-nak, se a koszorú ereidet, se a prostatádat nem fogod átverni ezzel a dumával, és én is tovább hallgathatnám a hülyeségeidet, ha jobban vigyáznál magadra. Persze az öregedéshez való társadalmi attitűdjeinket elsősorban a minket körülvevő kulturális közeg határozza meg, és ez a közeg folyamatosan változik. Ezért fontos megvizsgálni, hogy mit tartogat számunkra, és hogy hogyan lehet alkalmasint változtatni rajta. A mai egyik beszélgető társam, a holland író Marleen Wynants, a méltósággal öregedés helyett a méltatlan öregedés híve, mert esze ágában nincs betartani az életkorához kapcsolódó elvárásokat, nem fogja vissza magát, nem kér bocsánatot, és nem fogja szégyelni magát, amiért idős. Marleen a holland nyelvű belga folyóirat a Recto Verso szerkesztőbizottságának tagja. Lóránt Zsófia eszmetörténész, a Bécsi Egyetem társadalmi átalakulásokat kutató központjának, a Retszeknek a munkatársa. Magyarországon sokáig a Nők a Nőkért az Erőszak ellen Egyesület, azaz a NANE tagja volt, és a családon belüli erőszak áldozatait támogató NANE segélyvonalon is dolgozott. És ha már itt tartunk, mentsétek el a NANE segélyvonal számát, érdemes feljegyezni, az erőszakot átélők és az ő hozzátartozóik is kérhetnek tőlük segítséget. Fiona Rupprecht, a harmadik beszélgetőtársam pedig gerontológus kutató, szintén a Bécsi Egyetemről. Ennek a beszélgetésnek a házigazdája a Bécsi Altersschmiede Kunstverein, azaz az Öreg Kovácsok Művészeti Egyesület, akik a Svédenplatz közelében, a bécsi belvárosban ingyenes kulturális programokat tartanak minden nap ebben az egykori nehéz kovács műhelyből kialakított gyönyörű házban. Vágjunk is bele!
Fiona, you have written about how old is always someone else. It seems a moving goalpost for a while, and then it just starts to fall on us?
I think it's around mid-20s basically where this changes. So for example, before that, so before 25, younger adults, children as well, they tend to idealize an older age. They wish for autonomy, for freedom, for everything like that. And then in the mid-20s, this actually starts to change and people wish to be younger again. They wish for innocence, maybe, for youth, for not being responsible so much. So there is this change. But in general, I would say that being old is seen in such negative ways that we avoid this identity of being old for a long time. So we see, for example, older adults pushing this border of when someone would be considered old higher and higher. So for example, I myself would probably, or a person my age, would probably consider someone aged 60 old. But a 60-year-old person would consider someone aged 80 old, and so on. Because this identity seems to be so threatening to being considered old or considering oneself old.
Why are women not allowed to age?
There's many factors in this society that we're in that are very against aging and this idea of being young forever. So the problem with aging is, I think, a cultural one, a political one, and especially in neoliberal times, everything is focused on economically being productive, about money. Quality of life is measured in these terms, and I think that's a very wrong perspective.
The problem, I think, or the reason I would think people are delaying identifying with an age of life is because there is this association which wasn't there or wasn't quite the same even for my grandmother's generation. There's, of course, a class difference there and a cultural difference there. But also because with aging, we're supposed to gain authority, right? Or that's what I would associate primarily with aging. Is that just that we're not allowed to have that authority?
We are aspiring to an older age because we want the authority, but then we are facing the way age is devalued in society in many ways, and that there is also this very easy shift from first not having the authority, and then this authority is being taken away from us by the label of old, because if you're old, then you don't understand things anymore, right? You don't know how to use a smartphone or the internet. And this is obviously, again, changing rapidly because the generation over 60 nowadays, of course, knows how to use these gadgets. But there is always something that young people can do and you can't, and that can make you appear as less valuable for society.
Yeah, but I think that this is also probably something that may have not always been there. Like, why am I, as a self-identified middle-aged woman, always supposed to know what teens and 20-year-olds think is hip? It's just one part of it that I honestly don't really care all that much. What would be an ideal age that you would like to try your hand at right now?
50?
50. Fiona?
I'm quite satisfied with where I am.
Yeah.
Marleen?
I'm pretty happy with being 65. I mean, I'm fine.
These are very satisfied women. This is not a real sample, I think.
We actually have data on this, and people usually idealize a much younger age. Like particularly, like exactly the question you just asked, people would usually state much younger ages than they are at. So around 20s, 30s, maybe 40s, but those are already the very old ones.
To be a woman in any of our ages and to be able to say that you are happy with your age, that's a privilege, because that means that we have the financial, emotional and cultural independence from patriarchy and capitalism that most people don't.
A lot of people think that they have like the authority or the means or the power to have like control about whatever you do and how your career develops or how your life develops. And then realizing you don't have the control. But it depends so much on the context that you're born in, the context that you're educated in. and there's always constraints around you. There's so many things to take into account. The older you get, there is more responsibilities, and also the responsibility for yourself. I think that's why a lot of people, and younger people especially, are in this big identity crisis. And I think I saw that too. We really didn't make that big an issue of it. We were just going through the times and trying to get a job and trying to have fun and stuff like that. But it was not as much about like identity, like I am this and that, and I want people to take that into account. There are so many rules.
I think it's also harder to age when this prospect of becoming the elder who has a place in life and society and in the community, it's not really there. So it's not really offering you anything.
I would say that old age is historically quite young. So other phases of life are already quite shaped. So the expectations you would have for what to do in young adulthood, in middle adulthood, are relatively set in comparison to old age. But there aren't many expectations when it comes to old age itself and how to spend it. And I think what is a bit problematic is to see the development that old age is often depicted, for example, in the media in overly positive ways. So we see a lot of best ages there that are very healthy, very integrated, very engaged, and some people just cannot keep up with that idealized version of old age. And I think it would be important to have a more realistic portrayal, a more nuanced portrayal of what it means to grow old.
There is Aubrey de Grey, a fantast, who talks about like long age, we're all going to be like 140 years old. Thinking exercise there is interesting, because if we would really become 120 years old only, that means our lives would look different. Then you're not going to study between you're 18 and you're 25 or you're 30 and then work and then stop when you're 60. I mean, no, you still have like 60, 70 years to go. So life would be faced in a complete different way, I think. And it's interesting to think about it like in more in that kind of terms. It's not like from that age you're old. No, I see a lot of people my age who start doing a PhD, not exactly calling it like that sometimes, because now you have the experience, you have time to reflect on it.
There are no good models for women to age. That it's either this idealized but still desexualized figure, or the old witch, or women who pretend that they are not aging through these mostly medical interventions and a lot of makeup.
And we are very angry with them, but we also expect them to do that. That's important.
And I think it's also important to forgive them, but at the same time, they create a very misleading image.
So women's aging has a very strong component of reproductive and sexual angle, right? That's why we are not forgiven. We are interesting primarily in a prime reproductive age. Now, even the medical recommendations are being adjusted to the actual reality. But at the time when I was struggling with the whole obstetric regime, giving the first birth or a first pregnancy above 35, and it still is the case in many countries, was considered a geriatric pregnancy. And that is one marker that is very arbitrary, and it shows in the statistics how arbitrary it is, but it is also a completely unnecessary judgment on, of course, on a woman or someone with a woman's anatomy going into these spaces and always hearing about how she and her just existing for a bit longer time in and of itself is a problem. So how do we approach age and aging in this very toxic discourse? And I think this really is very strong right now. There's so much talk about women not having the appropriate number of children at the right age. Fiona, how would you come in here from sort of maybe a more individual point of view?
We have to see that in our current society we still have the privilege to decide against children, and this privilege hasn't always been there. It's still heavily stigmatized if you decide against children as a woman, but I still think that times have been changing in this regard, so we can make a choice.
So maybe this whole discourse is about women having an option, and that's why is this then the pure backlash to that?
I think that one needs a lot of support and internal strength to come over this pressure. I see that with friends and colleagues who chose not to have children, that it's extremely difficult to talk about this. Especially actually when you are over your fertile years, because people will either judge you as selfish or will show their pity. And I don't know how to overcome this. I think talking about it helps. I think the fact that more and more people write about it helps, and otherwise I have no idea.
I feel like as we age, this is always some kind of an accounting process of what have we achieved from the checklist. Is this your experience too?
I've never felt that pressure, and I'm very happy that there is more and more voices coming up, like to be able to decide to have no children, not to use your fertility tools. But for a lot of girls that are not as privileged as us, we're not even able to talk about it. Like 30 years ago, the Catholic influence in many countries in Western Europe was still very, very strong. And all these people were like pushing families or women to have children, to have more children. And in the meantime, there was all this pedophilic stuff going on in the back rooms. So, I mean, it's very complex. It's very complex.
I think, like particularly for women, it is expected to get children in order not to be lonely and alone in old age. So having children is also seen as some sort of preparation for old age. Like, what does old age mean for a woman who doesn't have kids? And I don't think that there is a strong societal vision of what this means. And I think we need, to create one, basically.
We know that historically, societies have needed older women without children to take over a lot of the care work and unpaid domestic work for men and women with children.
This is something that we didn't invent in the past 30, 40 years. Being single or not having children, or either a combination of these, or not being settled for a lifetime. But then, of course, the question of beauty and desirability comes in, which is, well, we'll leave it kind of last, although that's what we are bombarded with at all times. I think I saw my first targeted botox ads around 26, 27, which was a very big surprise for me. But right now, it's even more prevalent than it was back then.
We all struggle one way or the other with the ageism and sexism and lookism of Western capitalist patriarchal societies. And I always have this concern that I don't want to preach, or I don't want women around me to feel even worse about how they feel by telling them, oh, you shouldn't mind.
Oh, this like meta shame about feeling shame.
Yes, and I think it's such a dangerous. It's such a danger to fall into this trap. And what we can do, coming from or being in this privileged position right now, when we have less need to worry and we can be a little bit freer, is to show by example. And the concern is that it's not that we are way above this, and that sometimes it hits you hard. I had a geriatric pregnancy where actually I have to say that it was for me quite a challenge to balance between the ageism that's inbuilt and the actual medical issues that can come up and which are realistic. And then, you kind of become a scholar of this, although you were never trained to do that.
But let's be honest, geriatric pregnancy, just the word itself sounds like your baby is going to come out of the womb with a long grey mustache.
Or I will get old by the end. I was never sure. But you know, this is the other thing, that medical language would really need some human touch-up.
Fiona, you study the experience of age or felt age.
So most people feel way younger than they actually are. And I think this also has to do again with historical change in a way. So of course people who are nowadays old have their own grandparents and parents in their mind, and they are aging better. Better is a very complicated word here, but they are aging healthier, usually in more socially integrated ways. So they don't really see themselves at the same age as their parents or grandparents were, but feel younger. So I think that is the main age with felt age. But we also see we see that there is some benefit in feeling younger. So individuals who feel younger actually age in more positive ways, also subjectively more positive ways, but we see an end of the benefit if people feel extremely young or idealize a very young age. So this is problematic from a mental health perspective, because you idealize something you cannot keep up anymore.
Marleen, you have actual advice to offer, although not necessarily in the clickbaity ways people are used to, on aging gracefully, which is a very loaded term in and of itself. Please teach me how to age gracefully now in 13 easy steps.
I would rather teach you to age disgracefully. I mean, I think that's much more fun.
Okay.
It would be much more fun and much more speaking out for how you feel. No, I just wanted to come back very quickly to what Fiona was saying about this idea that women have children so that you're being taken care of at an older age and stuff like that. But that's really, that was an illusion, because what we see now is like a lot of children put their parents away in some care homes and senior homes and stuff like that. So, well, that's the joy and the privilege of having children, you know. Sometimes you meet people and then they say, you look good, even for your age. Well, at that moment, we should act. You should respond to it and not be glad or happy. You just have to react against that. No, you look your age, and there's nothing wrong with that. What are the actors or the people you like in your own context? It's people who have like an authentic face and an authenticity. But if you see people with lots of makeup and all the botox and the fillers and the whole thing, I mean, that is like really talking to a cardboard board person or something that is not really actually alive or there. And it's like a mask. And that's fine. I mean, if people want to wear a mask, that's fine. But I prefer to meet people without masks.
Zsófia, you say we should be forgiving with the people who choose the mask option, right? Forgiving. I mean, it's their face, so there's not much to forgive. But
you know, at the same time, it can really be disturbing, because often looking at a mask is disturbing, right? Often masks are made to be disturbing.
People in these very streets in Vienna not long ago protested against masks, different types of masks, but even those. What I find disturbing is that I see more and more young, like significantly young women in their 20s with lip fillers running around and with the amount of makeup that I don't even wear here on camera. When you see somebody going about mundane daily tasks in a full face of half a centimeter thick makeup, that's not a signal of them having fun, I don't think. No. That's a signal of probably like fear about being themselves or showing their face, or fearing not being good enough or acceptable enough, and that's what worries me.
I think that women are getting this message in every corner that you are never enough as you are. You need makeup, you need the hair, you need the expensive whatever accessory in order to be good enough. And this is part of the deal. But there is very little that you can do about it in these everyday encounters.
I was also just thinking of older age again, where there is this thing, you have to appear youthful, you're expected to appear youthful, but not too youthful. Mm-hmm. Like if you dress in like the newest ways, this is also considered very negative for older women again. So no, you can't really get it right, probably, like at least appearance-wise.
Yeah, like my targeted advertisements are recently about exactly like at this age, certain length of skirts and whatever. Like I should.
Oh, so you get the ads about longer skirts than you used to?
I don't know. I don't think that the internet knows what my skirts are like, but the message that I see coming when you know the whatever website has access to some of my data is that oh, I'm 40 plus, so I should slowly like disappear.
Yeah, under a rock.
Right? Under whatever.
So you hide under a rock. That's the plan, I think, for middle-aged women, according to my understanding of middle-aged, is that we hide under a rock and then just hand out dinner from underneath and take the dishes back. What kind of targeted ads do you get, Fiona?
Male ones, I guess. I don't get a lot of female advertisements.
You may have better internet settings. Yeah. Maybe it's this generational difference that you know how to set your browser.
I had a horrible time with advertisements for some weeks where I got a lot of chainsaws. I don't really remember what I Googled to target that, but yeah. But that's over now.
Marleen, what kind of oppressive regimes do you face in terms of like beauty expectations?
I was confronted with it when my own daughters were younger. And then suddenly they were like shocked, like, you don't shave your legs? No. So maybe you should do that. And your armpits? Well, sometimes I do, but mostly not. And they did these things when they were in their teens. And then a couple of years later, they came back to me and then they said like, oh, you were so right in showing us that we didn't have to do that. It took them a couple of years just to realize that you don't have to go along. And the funny thing is that 7 years ago, I published this book on age and trying to do away with all the cliches and all that thing. And then last season, there was a magazine, Recto Verso, which is like the Belgian Eurozine, but very much smaller, of course, on aging. And again, there, it took really a long time before we could get all the cliches from the table. And then, yeah, how do you start talking about this? Like with what we've been doing now for an hour, it's like really trying to point out little things. But if we want to have to make a synthesis or to wrap it up, we haven't come that far yet in our conversation here. And it's very valuable that we're doing it, but it's very complex.
When you explained that your daughters observed that you wouldn't shave and then came back later, I had the same experience. I used to think my mother was just insane for not complying with these. And then at this point, and I've talked with her about this, for her it was not a political statement. It was a very basic fact. You know, she just straight up told me, I don't have that kind of time in my life. And right now, I don't have that kind of time either. Just being a woman takes up so much time. There's a second shift and a third shift and almost a fourth shift, because we're also supposed to deal not just with beauty on like a moment-to-moment basis, but we also should have some kind of an arc to react to this, right? Or to live in this.
There are a lot of ideas about all the shifts in women's lives, but one that came up, and I think it's very much coming from 70s, 80s feminism, is this, that the expectation of looks is almost another shift.
So you do a shift in your workplace, then do it one domestically, and then there's a third one to maintain appearances.
This is, I think, also a bit more complicated than that, because having time for one's health, when it comes to aging, you need time for your health in terms of exercise, time to prepare meals that are good for you. Of course, for both of these, you need money. So there is also this aspect that this is heavily depends on your socio-economic situation. And where is the boundary between fighting age or taking care of yourself? And that's what everybody should have and everybody would deserve to have.
Fiona, where's that boundary between fighting age and just maintaining yourself as a person?
There is a complexity in it because we are still our young selves, like they stay with us. So I think there you have to have this room for your younger self in it, but also be accepting of the changes and maybe even embracing of the changes that are coming, because the changes that are coming aren't all negative. There are a lot of positive changes as we grow older.
Okay, I look forward to those.
I agree with what Fiona says. I mean, your younger self or yourself stays with you. And aging, yeah, we're all aging. So what's the problem? What has suddenly become a problem with aging? I mean, it's something we all have in common. It's part of life. So why making such a fuss about it?
Ladies, thank you for the conversation, but we all have to go because we have a lot of aging to do. Good night.
És te mit gondolsz, kedvet csináltunk egy kis botox kezeléshez? Vagy inkább befizeted a 12 éves unokaöcsédet egy hajbeültetésre? Írd meg kommentben, és ha már ott jársz, húzz egy lájkot, iratkozz fel az Átlátszó csatornájára, és ha teheted, támogasd az Átlátszót adománnyal, mert a független újságírást is fenn kell tartani valamiből. Ez a műsor az Eurozin és a Display Europe produkciója. Médiapartnereink a bécsi Októ TV és Magyarországon az Átlátszó. Ez a talkshow az Európai Unió Kreatív Európa programja és az Európai Kulturális Alapítvány társfinanszírozásával készül. Fontos, hogy az itt kifejtett nézetek és vélemények a megszólalók és a szerzők sajátjai nem feltétlenül tükrözik az Európai Unió vagy az Európai Oktatási és Kulturális Végrehajtó Ügynökség véleményét. Sem az Európai Unió, sem az EACEA nem tehető felelőssé értük. Köszönjük az Altes Mede Kunstvereinnek, hogy vendégül láttak minket.